Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Well, it's late afternoon on a Monday, April 1st, 2024. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you just to give you a little information and just to see how everybody's doing. Hope everybody's doing well on this rainy evening in Chicago. But in the meantime, here we are. Before I get started with my topic, I want to talk to you about something very exciting, something very, very exciting, and that's the Thrive Retreat that will take place on July 30th to August 4th, 2024 in Tulum, Mexico. The Thrive Retreat taking place July 30th through August 4th in Tulum, Mexico this summer. And it is for educators, educational leaders, classroom teachers, anyone that's interested in education. When I think of a Thrive Retreat, I think about how the relaxing atmosphere that teachers need after having taught all year round. I think about a welcoming environment where they can just relax and think about themselves, where they can just stretch out and just be who they are, as educators. I think about the three meals that will be given on a daily basis, and the treats and the snacks that we'll be able to do and able to eat. And then I think about the some of the excursions that we'll have, practicing yoga on a daily basis, and just being able to just put it back into you, taking back your passion as an educator as to why you became an educator. Even though you may think about it for just a little bit, but basically, we are going to be there just to sort of motivate you and just bring you back to that place when you chose to be an educator. We're talking about innovative workshops, sharing sessions, sharing what was your best lesson for the year. Sharing with other educators, and hopefully, if we have some leaders, sharing with leaders and administrators, because sometimes in the regular school environment, you don't have that opportunity to just sort of let go and express yourselves and whatever. So hopefully we're going to have some administrators that's going to join us on this retreat, and they'll be able to just sort of share how they feel as administrators, and then you're sharing how you feel as an educator, because there is a gap. There seems to be a gap. Even in my building, we sort of bridge the gap, but there seems to be a gap between classroom teachers and administrators. So think about it. If you have not signed up yet, go over to my website, aureliadavis.com, click on the Thrive Retreat and register, and just see all of the goodies that we're going to be offering you. We're offering certain room rates where you can either bump with someone or either you can be by yourself. And so look at the room rates. We do have a payment plan that's also in place. So I just want to meet you there. Come on and go with me. Please go with me. Go with me. The Thrive Retreat, July 30th through August 4th, 2024. Tulum, Mexico. Thank you. All right, get into a little bit about what I was going to be talking to you about tonight. I've been reading articles lately, educational articles, because even though I taught so many years ago and retired so many years ago, there are still things that are going on, some things that I witnessed when I was an educator. And then there's some things that are going on that I never did have the opportunity to witness now that I have retired. And so I was interested in a article where it was a young man that had worked for 20 years as an educator. And after those 20 years, he just decided it was quit time. He needed to quit. He stated that the autonomy was being taken away from him in his classroom. And autonomy meaning that there was certain amount of freedom that goes along with being a teacher in a classroom. Well, I could relate immediately with that, because that's what I cherished. That's what I cherished when I was teaching. And it was so interesting because I would go to the building, arrive, and I would go into my classroom. And once I was in my classroom, I basically would shut the door, because that was my own personal island. my own personal island. And I would enjoy so much time by myself preparing for my students. But once my students came into the room that morning, we basically were able to sort of become selfish about our space. Let me put it that way. We became selfish about the space that we had. And so that was something that we just basically, cherished. All the times I was teaching, I cherished it, and my students cherished it also. Well, the article talks about how, as time is going on, as we're living through the educational process, that now individuals that are in the higher ups, I would say, like a district level, state level, educational fields in the state level, the United States level, state level, city level, districts and things like that. They're starting to put more of their own pressure into the classroom as to what teachers can do and cannot do. What teachers can do and cannot do. And unfortunately, this is something that all educators don't necessarily like, because if you're going to trust me and hire me as an educator, and then you're going to come into my classroom and dictate to me how I teach, that makes me a little uneasy. That makes me a little uneasy, and I can basically get very angry about that. Um, One thing that I did cherish about teaching when I taught was that my administrators, and I was basically under at least four different administrators. And the good thing about the last two administrators I had, that was my assistant principal and my principal, they came from the school itself. They came from inside of the building. So we did know each other. So I didn't have to guess what they were going to ask me to do. I didn't have to guess about anything that they believed in, because they knew the staff and we knew them. And that made it a very more, we had a more comfortable environment to teach. I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel a lot of anxiety as to what I was doing, because by that time I had been in the field at least 10 to 15, 5 to 10 years, 5 to 10 years. And I knew my craft. I was good at my craft, and I gave myself the benefit of the doubt that my administrators knew how good I was, and it showed up time and time again. I would be complimented on a lot of things that I did, but also there were individuals within the building who did not feel comfortable with the administrators, and I found that those individuals were usually people that were hired, hired at the last minute, and they really didn't know the environment in which they were going to be teaching in. You know, um, our administrators basically involved us in every facet of our teaching, every facet of the school. They didn't put it that way, because what we were told is that the entire school belonged to us, and that we basically were responsible for the entire school. Now, if you're going into a building and you just want to be responsible for the 30 or plus children that are sitting in front of you, our school was not the place to be. Our school was not the place to be, because we were selected, or we went into that building with the knowledge and skills that we were responsible for 632 two children in that building. And as educators, we had each other's back, literally had each other's back. I remember being able to walk down the hall behind a classroom that was older than, because I had third grade, but I'd be able to walk down the hall behind maybe a classroom of sixth graders. And of course, I knew the teacher, that was the classroom teacher. And so as I saw students, sometimes the students, I used to have those particular students, but just in case there was a student that I did not have, I would see them and they're walking down the hall and I'm walking behind them going where I need to go. And then when I saw then what would happen is that if the children were, I wouldn't say misbehaving, but just sort of acting up and having fun in the back of the line, I would motion to the teacher, Miss Jones or Miss Johnson, Do you mind? Can you wait for a minute? And then, of course, we all recognized each other's as educators, and we responded to each other's as educators. We spoke, came in the morning, we spoke, we shared information, we talked about what was happening in our lives. So basically, every individual, every teacher in that building, every administrator, and we were talking even about the lunchroom staff and the maintenance people. We were family. We developed a family unit in that building. So we really did want to work with each other. So I would stop Miss Johnson. Miss Johnson, do you mind if I take Matthew back to my classroom? He seems to be getting a little antsy. And she said, please, please take him. And so I would take that particular child and talk to him, but he knew exactly who I was. That Miss Davis was a third grade teacher, but she had the right to pull me aside and talk to me and encourage me and pat me on the back, and just like her own students. So that was basically the type of teaching environment that I was able to teach in. But what I'm understanding that's happening now is that so many different things are changing, and it's a filtered down effect where it comes from the United States and then on to the states themselves, and from the states to the districts, and from the districts to the cities. And by the time you are told about it, a lot of times it has disappeared. But in the meantime, those administrators are still responsible for making sure certain things are happening within the building. And excuse me, one thing that I sort of always taught myself after seeing so many different programs and new ideas coming through out of 30 some years, I saw a lot of everything. And a lot of times these particular programs were trials. They wanted to see what would work in an inner city school. They wanted to see what would work in a multilingual school, school with a lot of diverse students. So it was a lot of things that were being tried on us and given to us for just to test out. And after a while, we as veteran teachers decided that some of this we could try. And at the same time, because it was handed down to us from the administrators, well, you need to show me that this is going to work. But the option was, show me if it's going to work in your classroom or if you like it. So our administrators gave us the idea that we did have a say in what new programs and what things were coming through that building to keep us abreast of the latest, whatever it was, curriculum and so on and so forth. And at the same time, we would take back, we didn't feel threatened enough to the point where we could not go into their office. Well, Miss Matthews, this didn't work in my classroom, and this is what I found to be wrong with it. So then what she would do is she would take everybody's opinions or take everybody's input and take it back to the district or take it back to the state. Now, one thing about this whole matter is that we were on top as far as scores are concerned. So we were not necessarily trying to try anything new that we did not already have in place. So what we were doing, and the skills we were using and the programs we were using was working in our building, because it got us very good results, and we were proud of that. So after a while, I'm just going to tell this as a joke. After a while, they left us alone because we would send so much stuff back to the district and to the city saying this is not working for our school. And and what I more than anything else, I hated how they would take one glove and make it fit all. I just said glove. They would take one glove and make it fit every school in the city of Chicago. That it does not make any sense. Or either take one glove and make it fit to one particular classroom within that particular school, because my third grade classroom is not going to be the same as my colleague's classroom across the hall. She has different children. And so I'm saying this to say that as an educator, if you have been in the field long enough, you're going to run into these challenges. And those challenges like I said before, is a trickle down effect that basically keeps giving you a lot of things to do. It's coming off the conveyor belt brand new, and they want to put it in the schools to see if it's going to work. I can't even start to name all of the things that have come through cooperative learning, just all kinds of things. Everything has a new name, but usually it's the same old thing. And when it finally comes down to it, you are responsible for teaching those children from September to June. And you need to be able to see some growth within each child, be it big or small, from the children for those few months that you have them. So anyone that is going through these changes and things now, what I would suggest to you to do, and I did a live on this before. I believe that when you are being interviewed for a when you're being interviewed for a classroom or for a school, you have the right to interview the school. I'll say that again. When you're being interviewed for a school, you also have the right to interview that school. And what's going to make it more easier now than it has ever been before is that there is such a shortage, so you can be a little choosy. There is such a big shortage of teachers. You can be afford to be a little choosy. Now, when you're choosing cities or districts to work in, of course, the first thing you may want to do is look at salaries. But when you're looking at the salaries, you also have to see exactly what's required for you to get that salary. I don't know if it still exists now, but at one time, in order to teach in Chicago, you had to live in Chicago. I'll say it again. In order to teach in Chicago, you had to be a resident of Chicago. And now I believe that came down with different mayors of our city, but at the same time, it was a requirement. It was a requirement. And the interesting thing that went along with that is that any teachers that were grandfathered in from before, say so many years before, then they had they were fortunate enough to be grandfathered in. In other words, they weren't going to tell you to move from the suburb into the city. And so that being looked at now, what cities are doing and they have to try to do is they have to see if the salary that they're giving the teachers is comparable to somebody living in the city. If you're talking about rents and sections of the city that you stay in and neighborhoods and things like that, if that's part of the requirement in order for you to work in a particular school district, then you as the educator have to weigh all of the options to see if it's something that you want to do. You have the choice. You have to see if it's something you want to do, because it's going to be very important for you to be happy where you're going to work. The children deserve for you to be a happy educator. I'll say that again. The students deserve for you to be a happy educator. And if you're in a building where the philosophy of that particular building on test scores and different things like that is not something that you can deal with, then most likely that's not the place you need to be. That's not the place you need to be. Now, let me tell you something. Those schools that have all kinds of challenges, low scores and low attendance and different things, and children are coming from diverse backgrounds and whatever. If you feel you're an educator that would like to work with those particular children, then you have the right to go into that particular interview with your own philosophy. You would ask the principal, what is the philosophy of this school? And then you would just basically express your philosophy as an educator. And it doesn't make a difference whether you have been teaching 2 years, 3 weeks, or one day. You by now should have a philosophy as to what you want your classroom to look like, or what you want, or why did you go into the field of education in the first place? Okay, so that's something that you need to consider when you are also looking for a position as an educator. So it was interesting because the writer of this article kept on talking about how things were just changing weekly and monthly and yearly and so forth. And I think what I would have advised this particular individual to do, instead of staying there and suffering, because we as educators, when we suffer, our children end up suffering also, because we can't put our best foot forward if we're not happy with the environment that we're teaching in. And so uh It's or either just discovering that teaching is not what you want to do. It sometimes it takes you to rethink your career, as to say, well, I thought this was going to be this way, and now it's something else, and I don't really feel that I want to do this anymore. It's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with that. What I would suggest, and what I is on behalf of speaking for students, is that you finish out the year. I think that would just benefit your children, mightily, if you would just finish out the year and finish the job you started in September. But at the same time, if you're in a building where the policies, everything that comes up on the grid, the principal is pushing towards you. Everything that comes up, the administrators are pushing it towards you to react and do. Your voice is very should be very effective, and letting them know that I can try this, but if it does not work, I'm going to come back and let you know how I felt about it. I was in the administrator's office quite a bit about new things that they were pushing on us as educators. And more than anything else, my concern was that this is going to interrupt what I've already started. And so why do I have to start this particular program right now? What is it supposed to benefit? Who is it supposed to benefit? My children? Is it supposed to benefit me as an educator? What is it supposed to prove? Is it a new way? And then what happened is that as these particular schools that were getting the information about new programs and what so on and so forth, um, they had to come to we would send back information to the district or to our administrator's boss that one thing doesn't fit everybody. So if I decide to take parts of this to work the parts of this particular program to work with some of my students, then I think that's sufficient enough. I would have tried it. And then what I'm going to also let you know is that if I have tried it A, B, and did A, B, C, and D, I'm going to let you know if it worked. I'll try it for at least 2 to 3 weeks to let you know if it worked. And if it does not work, then I'm as an administrator, I feel the responsibility to go back to doing what I was doing in the first place, which is giving those students what I need to give them in order for them to achieve. So it's a rough road to travel. And you as an educator, you have to know that you have just as much of a voice as the administrators in your building. And if you do go to interview for a school, and you should do your homework. Find out what's happening with this particular building. What's been going on in this particular school. How long has that principal or how long has that administrator been there? Because that makes a difference also. How long has the administrator been there? And another thing, do they have prior teaching experience? There was a time when administrators were going straight through educational programs without having ever been in the classroom. And I just thought that was wrong in so many levels. How can you how can you tell a teacher how to teach if you have never taught yourself? Makes sense. It does not make sense. That's what I'm saying. It does not make sense. So I had the tendency of finding out, even with my administrators, what grade did you teach? And I found out some of them just only taught the upper grades. Well, you know what? You need to come in and see what my third graders look like and my second graders look like and see what they do. And it was so much fun because we would switch up every once in a while and send the eighth grade teacher down to the primary and whatever. And they had a new respect for us once they got into those kindergarten classrooms and first grade classrooms. But this is part of the educational experience. You as an educator, you have to try everything in order for you to be able to achieve why you went into the field itself. You'll be surprised. It makes such a big difference to the children that you're working with, to the parents that you are going to get to know that are going to be very important to your job, to the administrators that are also going to be very important to your job. And you develop these relationships. But if you find yourself going into a building and just sort of locking yourself into a classroom and never come out to see exactly what's going on, yes, you're going to feel intimidated when things are coming towards you, because some things you cannot avoid. through administrators cannot not avoid it, and they can't let us avoid them either. Some things we just have to do. There has to be some kind of accountability eventually, but at the same time, you can find yourself if you express how these new programs are affecting you, then you have that voice to be able to say, well, you know what, that I'm doing this is how my math program is working real good, and I'm loving it. So can I continue to do this? You ask permission. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'll try the new program, but I'm just going to try it with like a small group of students just to see how it goes. And if it does not work, I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing. And that gives you more autonomy. That gives you more autonomy in your classroom. That gives you more freedom because that little island is yours, and whether you believe it or not, you are responsible for those little bitty eyes and mouths and noses and ears and things. They depend on you, and you are responsible for their learning. This has been this interesting conversation. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator. Thank you for just listening to me for a little while. Don't forget to go to the Thrive Retreat. Check in on the Thrive Retreat that's going to take place from July 30th to August 4th in Tulum. I hope I'm saying it right. Tulum, Mexico. Love to have you there. We're just going to have a ball. Go to the website, aureliadavis.com, and just sign up and see exactly what we have for you. And you're going to enjoy yourselves because I'm going to enjoy myself. This is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, coming to you. Please feel free to visit my website, aureliadavis.com. See some of the other offerings that I do have. And I'll talk to you soon, hopefully tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.